This over here is single-handedly the best Windows laptop I have ever tried. In true form, this is a desktop killer. This over here is single-handedly the best Apple laptop that I've ever tried. In fact, it's the best Mac ever made by Apple. It's the most powerful one, M5 Max. Which one is better? I don't know about you, but I hate paying for cloud subscriptions. Especially if you're an Apple user, I'm sure you can relate to the expensive storage. If you're a creator, you already know how your workflow demands more and more storage. And that's why 5 years ago I created my own cloud, and it has never failed me once. I have been using ASUS Workload 4 and 6, and this is what we use daily. All of the 7 years of YouTube business are living on these NAS drives. It turned out not to be just cheaper than cloud storage, but also so many more features, faster, and so much more storage. Whether you're looking to store your precious memories, important documents, your video or photo creative projects, back up your phone regularly overnight while you're sleeping, having a NAS drive that you can access locally and anywhere around the world has been a game changer for me. Depending on your needs, if you want to get started, I would highly recommend the newest version of this NAS, like the Workload 4 Gen 2 Plus, which now features dual 5GB Ethernet ports. If you've got bigger needs, then the Workload 6 Gen 2 Plus or higher. The bigger the number, the more drive bays. If you need a super fast flash NAS to have the best performance, then check out the FlashStore Gen 2 series with up to dual 10GB Ethernet and Ryzen CPUs. There is not a product that I find easier to recommend because it's not just something I am using, but something that has not failed me once in the past 5 years. Check out ASUS NAS and drives in the video description below. If you'd like to get a shock, check out the links in the description below for these devices. I'll explain that later on in the video. Now, the first thing I'd like to talk about is slightly geeky, but bear with me. In a minute, I'll explain some other workflows as well. But I want to talk about power draw, sustained power draw on the GPU and CPU. Now, these two laptops are completely different in terms of CPU architecture, the way the CPU is built, the way the GPU is built, and then the same on the Apple. Apple's gone one direction, whereas Windows has gone the other direction. So the main specs of these laptops, on the MSI side, we've got an RTX 5090 mobile GPU with 24GB of dedicated GDDR7 video memory. For CPU, we've got AMD Ryzen 9 9955HX 3D CPU with 16 cores and 32 threads and 64GB of RAM, and the SO-DIMM slots running at 5600 megatransfers per second. On this side, we've got the M5 Max with 18 CPU cores, some of them supers, some of them non-supers, and then 40 GPU cores. It's a 16-inch laptop. There is a little bit of a downgraded version available as well, but we're not looking at that one right now. So this is the fully spec'd out version. Then we've got 2 terabytes of SSD, which is super fast, Gen 5. So finally, we've got comparable SSD speeds on Mac and on PC. And then finally, 48GB of RAM. But one of the main things about the laptop is power consumption, and this is where things get really, really crazy. So the M5 MacBook Pro, M5 Max to be precise, 16-inch pulls at peak 80 watts, which is quite a bit more than the last generation M4 Max, but it's not able to sustain those power draws. The sustained power draw is gonna be somewhere around 48 watts, between 45 and 52, somewhere in the middle there in Workload. And the GPU peak, what I can see, is roughly around 40 watts, and then the GPU sustained is gonna be roughly about the same. So it can sustain its GPU power draw, but not the CPU power draw. Now, the reason for that is twofold. Number one, either your battery is not able to deliver that power wattage to you at all times, 80 watts in this M5 Max case, or you don't have the thermal capacity to sustain those power high loads. So if there is a massive delta between the peak, what it pushes through, and then the sustain, what that means is it's either power or thermally constrained. Now, on Windows side, they went completely the other way. They thought, we're gonna give loads of cooling, lots of power when you're plugged in. Just remember that when you're plugged in. We'll talk about that in a minute. In terms of CPU peak power, we're pushing 144 watts. And if you're plugged in, it can sustain that at all times. I've never seen it drop. It's absolutely amazing. GPU 175 watts, and at peak it's still pulling 175 watts. It can sustain both of these loads at all times. And there's a reason why this laptop has a 400 watt power brick with it. That's more than 3 times what you have on the MacBook Pro M5 Max. So in essence, if you want the Windows workstation, you're gonna have to bring the power brick with you, which is for people who need that x870 platform Windows. Not every application can be optimized for Mac. Not everything can be run on Mac. So this is very specifically for that one. And for a lot of people, they need just a desktop power workstation with them that they can still kind of carry around, because this is semi-portable. And the power here is absolutely amazing. Now, when we unplug these laptops, something amazing happens. The MacBook doesn't change a thing. It pulls exactly the same. But with the new M5 Max, because it pulls more power, the battery life is actually worse than the previous generation. Now, the MSI Radar A18 pulls about 35 watt instead of 144 as previously. So if you look at the graphs here, what you see is the red and orange is plugged in versus unplugged. Can you see how big of a difference there is on the reds compared to the blues? The blues, exactly the same, red's massive difference, which means that if you're not plugged in on this laptop, your performance is gonna be cut quite a bit. Let's take a look at the CPU performance then. In Cinebench R26, bear in mind, if it's not marked that it's on battery, it's plugged in and full power mode. We can see that the Radar A18HX is 5% slower in the single core score and about 3% slower in the multi-core scores. In GPU scores, the MSI laptop now is 16% faster. You can also see the battery percentage on MacBook Pro is exactly the same. So as you can see on battery, we're getting exactly the same scores on MacBook side. And on MSI, you can see how much performance we're actually losing on battery. I don't think the people who buy this laptop will be using this laptop without plugging this in. This laptop on a battery, that's not really meant for this, I don't think. Whereas the Apple has just wanted to build the best laptop that you can have plugged in or unplugged. It's just gonna have the same power, the best portable power on the go. So slightly different use cases, if that makes sense. This one, still the best portable power as a Windows, just plug it in. This MacBook Pro can also run on a power bank, on any power that you can get. So if you wanna edit in a field, then that's what Apple's targeting here. But looking at Geekbench 6, what we can see here is that the Radar A18HX is actually quite a bit slower, a lot more slower than on Cinebench. We can see 26% on single core and 31% on multi-core scores, which is very impressive considering that this laptop basically pulls half the power at peak or 3-4 times less power on sustained power than this one. What about GPU performance in Geekbench 6? The MSI Radar is 58% faster in the OpenCL scores. But the Vulkan or Metal scores, which can't really be compared to each other, if you compare Vulkan to Metal, then the MSI is actually about 9% slower. In AI workloads, and this is specifically the GPU AI workload, in single, we can see 20% faster on the MSI, 31% faster on the half, but on quantized, very interestingly, 38% slower. So maybe those neural engines on the M5 Max GPU cores really make a difference. Well, in this benchmark, it looks like they do. But actual workloads, moving on to photo editing, we can see that in Photoshop, the MSI is 10% slower. That's quite a bit slower. But moving on to Lightroom Classic, we can see that the MSI is about 15% faster in the standard overall scores and about 3% faster in the extended scores. So interestingly, how the tables have turned depending which photo editing application you're using. Bear in mind, interestingly, the AI score here, so the sky detection, object detection, and so on, is actually better on Apple compared to the RTX 5090. Now, moving on to Premiere Pro, and in here, bear in mind, this is the benchmark version that is not fully comparable or can't utilize all of the RTX 50 series encoders and decoders and media engines. So we're basically looking at the raw performance difference in both of them here. So for example, long GOP is massively more accelerated on the 50 series compared to this benchmark. So a little bit of an asterisk in here, and then perhaps looking at DaVinci Resolve later on, we'll see a bit of a better video editing difference. But just adding this Premiere Pro here as well, because that is the only benchmark that I can compare there, but have to have an asterisk because there is no way to actually utilize all of the 50 series because Adobe removed H.265 plugin support for the benchmarking, so, you know, can't happen. But interestingly, extended score is about 7% faster on the MSI and about 12% slower on the standard overall scores. But then if you're looking into each individual scores, obviously ProRes much better on the Mac because ProRes Apple codec works a lot better in there, which is interframe basically there. But then at the same time, RAW a lot better on the Windows side. GPU effects better on the Windows side. So it's a bit of a mixed match depending which codec you're using. Go with that. I'd say if you're using ProRes, the Mac will be better, but then long GOP or RAW codecs, Windows got kind of more power to push through there. But interestingly, still quite similar overall scores. In After Effects, things get really wacky. The MSI is 93%, almost double the scores in overall, and extended 76% faster. And that is due to, I think, the M5 Max not being fully compatible and optimized yet, because if you look at the 3D standard score, the M5 Max got the score of 8, whereas the MSI got the score of 151. That should not happen. We're not 1,718% faster on the MSI compared to the Apple, which is ridiculous. But then you look at the tracking and 2D extended scores, the MSI is actually slower, which is very, very interesting. So I think the M5 Max is not fully optimized for After Effects yet. So, you know, update your After Effects whenever you're doing After Effects on the M5 Max. What about DaVinci Resolve? And here things get very, very interesting because this is the program that should be optimized the best for both of them. And look at that, the M5 Max is just faster. Overall basic score 13% slower on the MSI, 7.5% slower in the standard scores, and then extended scores 0.08% faster on the MSI, which is basically just a tie. But I would say that just the Mac is better. Interestingly, the AI is better with the RTX 5090 because you just got more power to push through all the AI things. But the GPU effects, you can see that the 5090 is better on the pure raw GPU power, but overall, the MSI is not actually pulling its weight apart from the GPU effects. So if you're doing, I don't know, noise reduction or color grading or some of the GPU accelerated things, then the 5090 will be better, but with the cost of bringing in a massive power brick, if that makes sense. But I would say the M5 Max is super impressive to keep up with such a beast of a power-hungry laptop there. What about 3D? And here in Redshift, we can see that the MSI Rider is about 16% faster in the GPU scores. So the 5090 is still better, but bear in mind, it pulls a lot more power. The 5090 here pulls 175 watts, while in that particular benchmark, it's actually pulling around 140, what I'm seeing pulled. But even at that point, we're about 3-4 times more than the 5090, which is absolutely insane. And if you're looking at blended performance or so on, we're seeing similar results that it's very, very comparable plugged in. But bear in mind, this is plugged in. When you unplug this laptop, there's no competition. The M5 Max absolutely smokes any Windows laptop that's out there. Like the best, however it's optimized, there is no competition on Windows side if your laptop is unplugged. These beasts are not meant to be unplugged, and that's it. But what is the biggest curveball? The biggest curveball is actually pricing. Now, if we're looking at particular models, then this model here right now in the US on Amazon, this goes $6,700. In the Amazon UK, this laptop goes over £9,000. That's like $12,000. That's ridiculous. You can buy 2 of these M5 Max laptops for the price of this one, which is mental. If we completely maxed out this M5 Max, meaning 128 gigabytes of unified memory, 8 terabytes of RAM, then our pricing is still going to be $7,200 compared to this here. Now, on Amazon, yes, this is about $500 cheaper or something like that, but in Amazon UK, it's so much more expensive. Now, that being said, the M5 Max just looks better in performance, better on the go, better portability. In terms of actually using it, battery life, this one wins so fast. So I've had this on idle. When I started recording this video, it was on 95% battery. We're at 82 and we've been recording 21 minutes. So in 21 minutes, I have lost 13% of battery by doing nothing, just sitting there. It's sucking the power like no tomorrow. The battery life, terrible. Here's the thing, the curveball is that there are people who need this type of power and this type of machine on the go. If you plug this machine in, it's impressive. I just built myself a desktop PC because I do have some of these parts already here that I had from ages ago. So I thought I'm actually gonna build myself, because I've been trying to run these laptops and trying to make the workstation, but certain things didn't work. So I wanted something that has 10 gigabit Ethernet, lots of ports, lots of just fast connectivity. And then I built myself a desktop. Here's the thing, this guy here is actually better than my desktop PC. That shows how powerful this laptop is if you plug it in. Now, that being said, it also shows how flipping amazing the M5 Max is by not having a power cord attached to it, which is ridiculous. The last tip for this Apple is that if you're using Apple MacBooks, just keep them plugged in. You're gonna save battery, trust me. Congratulations! If you've reached this part of the video, you're in the top 13% of people's attention graph. And there's more than 50% chance that you seeing this means you're not subscribed. So consider subscribing, hitting that bell icon, liking the video. It would mean a world to us. If you'd like to get detailed access to our internal benchmark database of CPUs, GPUs, SSDs, and so on for creators, then may I invite you to sign up to our newsletter, where we send out relevant information a couple of times a month when there is information. I'm not interested in flooding your inbox. This is when there is good information to share for your creative workflow. Then we'll send those emails out. And also you'll get the most exclusive access to some of the behind the scenes, perhaps even giveaways. So scan that QR code or link in the description below. If you've got any urgent questions to me personally, you can always reach out on Minect. I'll always get back to my messages. If you're looking for a new hoodie, may I recommend this one. This is not just any cheap random hoodie. This is a high quality hoodie that you can get. And when purchasing this, we get a small little kickback to help us build what we're building here. My passion is to help creators choose the best tech for their workflow and help them save some money in the process. This is Tech Notice, and if you've reached this part of the video, you have been upgraded to the top 5% of the people who ever see this part. And now YouTube thinks that you'll like this video, and if you haven't subscribed, you can do it on this side. Thanks very much, guys, for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.